Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session on Mission Control. My name is Jose Barajas, and I'll be taking you through today's session. The goal for today is to show you this new capability within AttackIQ. I'm going to give it like 30 seconds. I know folks are, between meetings and all that. We'll let you guys settle in, and then we'll get started here in a second. Perfect. With that, we're 1 minute over. The little courtesy time is up. Before we get started, just a little bit of details. You should have the ability to comment. So as I'm going through the presentation today, please feel free to add a comment. I'll keep an eye out, or my team will point it out to me, and we'll try to answer those questions. If we don't get to them, we'll absolutely follow up. Please add the comments anyways. And once this goes, live on LinkedIn, then we can follow up with you and answer any questions that you may have. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump in and walk through Mission Control. So at AttackIQ, we're a breach and attack simulation solution to help our customers identify gaps in their security controls, but also help measure their ability against known attacker behavior. As there's an emerging threat, we provide content to help our customers evaluate their technology and their security stack against that threat. Now, in order to support that process, we've come out with this new concept called Mission Control. Mission Control is here to provide you guys the ability to provide testing across your organization, giving your individual stakeholders the ability for them to do their own testing within the realm that they own and operate, while still giving you as the operator the main control about what's being tested and having visibility across the various business units that's being tested. So with that, let's go ahead and get started and just walk you through what we're talking about here. So first of all, what we found with this concept of breach and attack simulation, there's a lot of challenges that arise, not with the technology, but from an organizational perspective. One thing that we've observed is, first of all, disjointed testing. It's really hard to coordinate across multiple teams and stakeholders. This can be for varying reasons. The two main reasons that I observe and we observe is think about organizations that are structured to have different regions globally. If you operate in that way, then you have distinct groups around the world all working within their own space. It's very hard for them to kind of work together and join one thing in one kind of purpose and goal. In this case, testing. The other way that we've observed this too is we might have SOC teams that are very much dedicated to different realms. What I mean by that is think of the traditional SOC team. They might be able to define the policies and implement rules, but they don't actually own and operate the infrastructure. The EDR team does, the firewall team does. So these are kind of organizational constructs that get in the way of testing. And that's one of the challenges that we're hoping to address with this capability. The second one that we see a lot is varying skill levels. From that perspective, we might have someone that's very good, I'd say, managing the firewall and configuring that policy to the specifications of the organization, but may not have any experience at all from the perspective of development of, let's say, detection rules, may not have any experience at all from the perspective of red team, or you may have some fresh team members on the team that may not have cybersecurity experience at all. The idea with this is someone senior can define the testing and have the individual users actually go in and just focus on the realm that they own and operate versus having to, introduce them to the entirety of breach and attack simulation construct. And then finally, inefficient workflows. Folks get lost in having maybe too much to run. We don't want the firewall person or the EDR person. I don't want to keep picking on the firewall person, but we don't want them to get inundated with what should I be testing, right? There's, N number of things that we can test for, right? We want the SOC team to be very specific and prescriptive, giving these teams a goal of focus while they can focus on other things that may not pertain specific to the firewall, as an example there. Now, that's where Mission Control comes into place. The idea is to help provide distributed systems a method and a process by which they can test at scale within the organization, all the while, giving those teams the ability to measure themselves against one another, or more importantly, the executive team, the ability to understand what parts of the business are doing good, which ones need some help, and how can we, one, share things between teams to have that centralized and seamless administration from that perspective, but also from the perspective of what areas of my business need help. If someone's scoring an F and others are doing A, well, what do they need that others don't have? How can we support them better? This also addresses some other issues around, role-based access and testing insight. This gives you the ability to define what should be tested, what it should be tested on, and then limit those users to those scopes. And then the idea with Mission Control is that this will help accelerate the testing workflows. Instead of opening up, and I'm going to keep picking on the firewall guy or gal, as we're running new firewall items, let's give them something specific to focus on versus opening up the entire world of possibility when it comes to testing. Very focused on the mission here is the idea. No pun intended there. Now, in terms of how it works technically, administrators can create and assign business entities. So different groups within your organization, again, whether they're structured around technologies that they own and operate, or maybe from a geographical point of perspective, you can create business entities and then assign users to be part of those entities. This new user will have what's called the reviewer role. And the reviewer will actually have the ability to view the results, analyze the insights, and even run the assessments. We want to arm them with the ability to understand where their gaps are, but also as they have mitigations that they want to implement, give them the ability to retest, rerun, and verify that the changes that they're making to the infrastructure have actually helped make them better is the idea. Now, finally, as administrators can then get visibility into these tenants and then actually generate some report as part of that process as well. Now, let's take a look further deeper at how this kind of works structurally. As you can see here, the first column, we have security leadership. This is going to be, the organization itself. That organization in this case is structured where we have security managers that own different regions of the world. US West, US East, and London. What we've done here is we've created business units for each of these entities, allowing us to now have each of these distinct groups have their own access, their own view, and the ability for them to get a report card or score on how they're doing based on the testing that's been provided. And with this view here, it really helps, with the management team here, and even the security teams themselves, to have a basis by which they can compare themselves apples to apples, get an understanding in this case, why is it that US West, where I happen to be, getting a C versus London that's getting an A? Are there different processes? Are there different policies? Is that team simply understaffed? These are the kind of questions that can arise. And then once we reach that threshold of A, how do we maintain that? If ongoing process, for some reason, we have some regression, well, let's analyze that, bring that to completion and fruition, addressing the gap, and then go back and retest. Again, giving your teams local ability to control their own fate, while also giving HQ and the security management the overlay capability here. One thing that we found by doing this, we've been working obviously with anything that we do here at AttackIQ, we work with our customers to develop this. The very interesting thing that comes out of this, and I've experienced this in other kind of processes, is when you start to build a competitive kind of situation amongst yourselves. As a security engineer myself, I want to be the guy with the A and see why other folks are not doing as well. Now, with that said, we're all one organization. We want to work together and get better. But there's some interesting things that happen when you start to assign different groups a score, and now you're comparing them against other groups. It creates a very competitive atmosphere, which I think at the end of the day, improves the environment as a whole, which is the ultimate goal of this testing here. Now, putting it all together, the workflow at the end of the day will be the leaders, again, assign the business entities. Every business entity will have its own unique score. We'll dive into the scoring when I actually get to demo here at the end to unpack that a little bit. And then finally, management will get to generate reporting based on the scores that are observed as part of that process. So now, if we go further from here, the last thing I want to cover before the demo is two more things here, is at the end of the day, the benefits here and the goals and objectives of Mission Control is to help provide your team alignment. While this can absolutely be done as a construct outside of the product, what we wanted to do is help facilitate this so that you as a SOC members leading testing efforts can be very prescriptive to your teams and control what they're looking at, while at the same time building this construct where that you guys can work together and really give your folks access that where you might as well not have. The other thing, the benefit that we see a lot of, and we have an IDC report that also showcases this, is as those team members, and I'm going to keep picking on the firewall guy or gal, but as those team members start to see this testing results, get to actually control the testing and do it themselves, then we get to up-level them and help them better understand your needs as a SOC team and why these things matter. What is the impact of that one firewall policy here, right? When they see that a threat was not mitigated because of that policy, it's really going to help your team understand and create this cohesive, alignment between the two of you, but also up-level them from understanding the threats and why their job matters as administrators of this technology in terms of keeping the organization safe. Finally, by establishing this process, we have improved efficiency with testing. Again, instead of having to do these workflows, manage these in other ways outside of the product or through internal processes, all this can be handled and managed within the AttackIQ solution itself. So that's all I wanted to talk about today in terms of slides. Let's jump into the demo and actually show you what I'm talking about next. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me share my screen here. All right, team. So here we have the AttackIQ product. I'm not going to focus too much on here. I'm going to focus on mission control. But I did quickly want to show you how we would actually go about setting up the different testing. For those of you that may not be too familiar with AttackIQ as a whole, feel free to find us on LinkedIn. We post our webinars there all the time. Or you can simply find us on YouTube and get a full-fledged demo on the Enterprise product. Again, that's not the focus of today. I'm just going to briefly show you how do you create the mission control view for your users. But those interested in additional context, please find us or reach out to us in the comments. I'm more than happy to send you some links directly as well. With that said, this is our enterprise solution here, where folks can go ahead and conduct testing across the environment. The one takeaway I want you to come with from this view is the fact that we actually provide you with this concept of assessments. Assessments are the core workflow in the product, and we're going to have assessments across a variety of different use cases, whether it's testing our Palo Alto policies to make sure that we're preventing those. We have things like testing against Linux top 10 threats, some CrowdStrike and Microsoft Defender policy, and then further down we have some CISA alerts and ransomware and other type of malware and emerging threats that we're running as part of this process. Each of these are assessments that are going to help your team understand either your control capabilities and whether there's gaps, or also help you understand your ability to mitigate a certain threat so that you can get an understanding of that and do the work that you need to do to shift left. For each of these assessments, we can actually go ahead and assign them to different business senses that you see here. What I've done is I've assigned different ones. Obviously, the Palo Alto one, we're going to assign it to the network team. All these other ones that we expect the endpoint team to be able to manage, we've gone ahead and assigned it to them, along with the threat group. So the organization, at least in my lab here, we're emulating the structure of a team that's typically focused on the perspective of different technologies being owned and operated by distinct groups. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and show you what the view would look like for someone that's been assigned this mission control view that you see here. Now, this is the view for the mission control specialist. That is the role that you would assign to a user so that they can have this specific view. And as you can see, all the different assessments that were built from the mapping of those business entities are now showing up here. Apparently, Jose does a little bit of everything across the organization, and hence I've been added to both endpoint, network, and threat, as you can see here. What this does is it allows the analyst to actually go ahead and take a look at some of the reports. I'm going to show you a report at the end, so I'm not going to open up any of these, but I wanted to show you that we provide both executive reports, which is what I'll focus on today, but also very detailed reports, essentially the forensic level details that an analyst might need to either find the events or even create detection rules against what we've observed as part of the process. The idea is that the analyst can go ahead and get insights into this context at any time from their view, as assigned by you, the SOC analyst running the AttackIQ platform itself. The other thing that we do is, based on this, they can also see the assets that are under their purview based on this map in here. The other thing I want to call out is the ability to rerun assessments. By providing this very limited scope to the analyst, as a network engineer modifying my firewall policies as an example, I can go ahead and actually rerun this assessment to see whether the changes I've made are actually going to affect the results. Meaning, right now we have a 67% prevention rate, 70% detection rate. I've just made some policy changes to make that better. Let's go ahead and actually measure that. And that's exactly what I've done by kicking off that assessment there. Now, while that runs in the background, we'll eventually get a new report. Again, I'll show you one in a moment. But beyond jumping straight into a report, I wanted to show you some additional context and details that we have here. As you can see here, we're providing an overall score. That score is made up of two factors, and you can actually look at it here from a letter green perspective, but it's going to be based on the test point coverage and the success rate within that coverage. So the outer ring here is going to showcase that we've actually only ran it on 60% of the assets. We may want to look into why are we running it on the other portions, but overall, this means that we're not getting a full picture when it comes to collection because we're not running it against the entire estate of assets deployed. Now, we then can look at the success rate within that circle. So while we've only ran it on 60% of them, the average score across those was 91%. With those two pieces of information in mind and the different TTPs that are run as part of this process, which you can see below, we're coming up with a score. This is going to help provide a nice and quick measure to compare different business units within your organization and help drive a comparison between your different teams in terms of how they're doing within the purview of the technologies or threats that they own and operate as part of this process. Now, to further support the mission control specialists, we'll have some other breakdown information where they can see summaries about tests performed, a breakdown by different assets in their prevention and detection rates for each of these. From here, we can actually see the different types of assessment and what are the results that we're getting from a detection and execution and prevention perspective, along with a breakdown of individual scenarios. So here we can see what are the top 10 scenarios most not prevented or not detected, as an example, and then some scenarios that we just outright have no coverage at all. So this really helps prioritize for the team what they want to focus on, what they want to address as part of this process. Finally, we'll give you a view in comparison from the perspective of the assets. You have different environments, different groups that you may be testing within. This is going to help us understand, these two are doing quite well. These bottom two, why are they so different? Why is it that despite supposedly having the same policies from an EDR perspective, as an example, that we're seeing just differentiating results? These are the type of things that we're going to provide to the mission control specialists so that they can, again, focus on their infrastructure, address those gaps that they observe without needing to come back to the SOC team, while the SOC team can have full visibility into the results and help support the team if it's required as part of the process. Now, the last thing here is going to be some reporting. Reports, as you can see here, we're currently running the assessment. For each of these, we can actually go ahead and view some of the reports. And let's go ahead and show you one of the reports that gets generated here by walking you through the summary report. The summary report is going to help us understand, in this case, we're focusing on the London office, but we can see the overall preventions. We can see here that we have some gaps in detections. From here, we can actually then start to get an understanding of, okay, how many assessments are ran, how many over attacks were ran, and what were the assets where this was run in. All this helps scope out and understand where things were. And as we run things multiple times, will help indicate whether we're getting better or worse. So really showcasing also a historical view of the results and details. From there, we can then see some of the information we saw previously, but in a report format where we're highlighting the top 10 scenarios that are not being prevented or detected, a breakdown by the assets and how their coverage is. Again, we see here inconsistencies between assets from both the prevention and the detection perspective. These are the type of things that the local EDR team can focus on, address, scope out, see what's different so that we can come to an understanding and make decisions about how we might address this. And if we see other teams having the same similar inconsistencies, we can share these amongst groups and make the overall score of the business and organization better as part of this process. That's all I have, team, for today. Those are going to be essentially mission control. We've done a lot of work to basically help your team go from having distinct groups, having a process, to now having that process within AttackIQ, giving your team the visibility to an understanding of how are we doing, let's say 90 days ago, versus how we're doing in the last 7 days. Looks like not too much change in this environment, but the idea is to enable different groups that aren't necessarily part of the SOC team or the core team running AttackIQ the ability to both run the tests, review the results, make the environment better, all the while giving you a high-level overview and reporting at each individual business unit level. That's all that we wanted to show you today, team. We'll keep an eye out if there's any comments and get back to any of you. But for now, I think have a nice day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you.